C60 olive oil is a popular choice for people wanting to activate their full potential. Improved sleep, faster recovery and more energy are just a few of the amazing comments received from our customers who take a spoonful a day. Make C60 oil a part of your daily routine and see what it can do for you. Activate your potential today at thec60company.com.
Another example of this fake justice, this fake fairness, can be seen in an extraordinary story out of Cyprus. This is the case of a British teenage girl who went to the police in Cyprus, where she was working, to say she had been raped by 12 Israeli men. And what happened is the police and the judge that followed were clearly seeking to destroy this girl to protect the 12 Israeli men. I mean, that is so obvious when you look at the evidence. The police interviewed her for 7-8 hours without a lawyer and without a translator, and got her to sign a retraction of her claim, which allowed the 12 Israeli men to be allowed back to Israel, and you'll never get them out of there and back to Cyprus now. And at Tel Aviv airport, these wonderful expressions of humanity, these 12 Israelis, were shouting that the British girl was a whore while quaffing champagne. Lovely people, I understand. And even worse than that is that the teenager was then charged with lying to police and was put before a judge that was so biased it's unbelievable, that convicted her, and now she faces possible prison sentence. The British government has complained at her treatment, but what is the British government compared with the Israeli government in terms of the Cyprus government? And people have become so appalled by what they've seen that there are protests in Cyprus, and there are calls to boycott Cyprus in terms of tourism over what has happened there. And that boycott is something I absolutely support, because if it will happen to this girl, it will happen to others. And we have a situation very clearly, because the Israeli government and the Cyprus government are very close, and that's always code for the Israeli government controls the Cyprus government. It's very clear that these men have been protected on the say-so of Israel. And here's a story which kind of confirms what has been happening. British teenager's confession over gang rape case was dictated by Cyprus police and uses phrases an English person wouldn't use, a language expert finds. A confession signed by a British student saying she invented a gang rape is highly unlikely to have been composed by her, a respected linguist said last night. It was much more likely to have been the words of a Cypriot policeman dictating what she should write, Dr. Andrea Nini said. The statement, which can be revealed for the first time, is the crux of a case that has sparked a diplomatic incident with the teenager dragged to court and convicted of lying. In July, the 19-year-old, in her summer before university, went to police in a party resort of Aya Napa to say that she had been raped by up to 12 Israeli youths. She retracted her statement 10 days later, under duress, she says, after police on the island threatened her. This is how justice works. It's not what you do, it's not what's happened to you, it's who you are and who you're accusing. But rather than being allowed home, she was hauled to court and charged with the crime of public mischief. The girl's shambolic trial, which has led to her being stranded on Cyprus, centered around the statement which she says Detective Sergeant Marios Christou forced out of her after 8 hours of questioning without a lawyer. Written in the woman's handwriting, the disputed text contains sentences such as, quote, "The report I did was not the truth, and I discovered them recording me doing sexual intercourse. The teenager from Derbyshire says they are not her words but are Greek English as it was told to her." Dr. Nini, who gave evidence to the trial on her behalf, said she would have had to be a criminal mastermind to fake the structure of sentences to make him believe they came from a non-native English speaker. The forensic linguist, who is registered as an expert advisor with the UK's National Crime Agency, says there was very compelling linguistic evidence. The retraction was dictated by a non-English person. Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab has raised concerns about the trial since the teenager's conviction. His staff have been in touch with Cypriot authorities ahead of sentencing, when she faces up to a year in jail. She has claimed that Mr. Christos, the policeman, well, the crook policeman, wore her down over 8 hours of questioning, during which she says she was threatened and prevented from using the toilet. She said she eventually signed the statement at 1:29 a.m. in the hope she would be allowed home. During her trial, she told Famagusta District Court, "Marios was approaching me and shouting at me to stop crying. I felt vulnerable. I felt like I was in danger as he wasn't going by the law. I wasn't allowed a lawyer." Of the statement she signed, she said, "This is not proper English. It is in Greek English. I'm very well educated. I'm going to university. It does not make grammatical sense. There is not one sentence there that an English person would write." But Mr. Christou is adamant that the woman was free to write the key part of the sentence. But Mr. Christos, or Christou, hold on. But Mr. Christou is adamant that the woman was free to write the key part of the statement herself. It reads, "The report I did on the 17th of July 2019 that I was raped at Aya Napa was not the truth. The truth is that I wasn't raped, and everything that happened in that apartment spelt wrong, was with my consent. The reason I made the statement with the fake report is because I did not know they were recording and humiliating me that night. I discovered them recording me doing sexual intercourse, and I felt embarrassed, so I want to apologise, spelt wrong, and say I made a mistake." Dr. Nini of Manchester University said it was highly unlikely someone of the student's background would have composed the statement in that way. Of the two hypotheses, that it was composed by the defendant or it was dictated by a local police officer, my conclusion from the linguistic evidence is the latter, he said. For example, doing sexual intercourse is not something a native English speaker would say. They would say having sexual intercourse. Despite Dr. Nini's evidence, Judge Michaelis Papathanassiou, long name, ruled the student had written the statement freely, sealing her fate. The judge was absolutely disgusting and clearly on a on a course of destroying the case against the Israelis by destroying the girl. Disgusting beyond belief. This is justice. I think it's very surprising that the judge dismissed my evidence, Dr. Nini said. I don't see how it could have been faked. She would have had to be a criminal mastermind. The student, who had 3 unconditional offers to start university in September, has been stranded on the island for 5 months. So the student, who had 3 unconditional offers to start university in September, had been stranded, or has been stranded, on the island for 5 months. So that is not just a disgusting story, but so indicative of the way justice is applied to some and denied others, depending on the political situation. And here we have the real background to why this teenager has been treated so appallingly. Israel signs billion-dollar gas pipeline deal with the Cypriots. The leaders of Cyprus and Israel met last night to sign a billion-dollar gas pipeline deal only days after the British teenager was convicted. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the Cypriot president came together in Athens for the historic deal, which also involved Greece. Only a few months ago, Cyprus and Israel were facing a diplomatic nightmare when the British tourist accused of 12 Israeli citizens of raping her. It has been suggested that the fate of the youths, who were arrested but then released without charge, was followed closely by those in high places in Israel. Oh, just a little bit. On the day that Britain was hauled in for questioning and made her sudden retraction, the Greek foreign minister was visiting Israel and seemingly taking an interest in the case. Relations between Cyprus and Israel have been growing in recent years. That's code for control of Cyprus by Israel has been growing in recent years. The deal between the countries and Greece is for a massive pipeline project to ship gas from the eastern Mediterranean to Europe. The Greek Prime Minister, Netanyahu, and the Cypriot leader took part in the ceremony at which their respective energy ministers signed the deal. And this is the psychopathic nature of the mentality that is running the world, where the unspeakable, unimaginable things that happened to that teenager by 12 Israeli youths matter not at all to these psychopaths. The only way to respond is to shut it down for the benefit of Israel and these 12 men. Now, another story this week on the same theme goes like this. Grooming epidemic has almost 19,000 children identified as sexual exploitation victims in England. I'll come to the background in a second, but this is the story. Almost 19,000 children have been sexually groomed in England in the past year. According to official figures that have prompted warnings of an epidemic. Campaigners say the true figure is far higher and accused the government of failing to tackle child sexual exploitation, despite promises made after the high-profile cases in Rotherham and Rochdale. More than 18,700 suspected victims of child sexual exploitation were identified by local authorities in 2018-19, up from 3,300 to 18,700 in 5 years. Sarah Champion, the Labour MP for Rotherham, said the figures show that grooming remains one of the largest forms of sexual or child abuse in the country. Too many times, government has said it will learn lessons, yet 19,000 children are still at risk of sexual exploitation, she told The Independent. Now let's look at the background to this. these grooming gangs sexually targeting children in Britain, England, are overwhelmingly of Asian origin, particularly Pakistani origin. And that was the reason that the police and the local councils, Labour councils as usual, allowed the trafficking gangs to go on unmolested year after year after year, no matter the effect on the kids, because they didn't want to be seen as being racist. But the white kids, and that's overwhelmingly again what they are, they don't matter. Because you mustn't be racist by arresting people or abusing children. And eventually it comes to light because it got to such a level. And like this MP said, lessons have been learned. No, they haven't. It's going on all over the country. And, it's very simple. Again, as I said earlier, you look at people's behaviour and you respond to that behaviour. If gangs are exploiting children and trafficking children and sexually abusing children, then you deal with it immediately. No matter what their racial or religious background. That's what a non-racial society, non-racist society does. What a racist society does is say, we can't go for these people because of their colour. And those being abused of another colour, well, they don't really matter. That's racism by any criteria. And that's what's going on. The government said it would have a review into the characteristics of grooming gangs in 2018 and said high-profile cases including a high proportion of men of Pakistani heritage and that cultural reasons could be at play. What do you mean could be at play? They are! When you have disgust for women, you think you're superior to women, then you could do what you like to women in your mind. Of course it's cultural. These people should be looking at bars with the key thrown away. Talk about psychopathy. But no, you can't do that. It's racist. Not doing it is racist. And this theme is everywhere.